now it's time for the Anchormen podcast with Matt Gates and Pearson Sharp.
Welcome back to another episode of Anchormen, and we have an incredible guest here for the discussion. Today I'm joined, as always, by my friend and the host of the Sharp Report here on One American News, Pearson Sharp. I get to host the Matt Gates Show. It's on at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 Pacific. And we have the Sawman with us, Sawman Sawyer. We are so incredibly moved by your life's work, your experiences around child rescue. Pearson, you did such a good job getting the Sawman here in studio. Give us a little introduction and start off our conversation for us.
I don't think I could do it justice, honestly. I mean, the history of this guy, it's unbelievable. This is the American that we wish we all were, honestly. He's fighting the fight that a lot of us can't fight, a lot of us are too afraid to fight. He's a Navy SEAL, Marine, now he rescues children. And he's people say this a lot, but he is absolutely doing God's work. And I wish we had a million more men like you.
Sawman, you now are leading Vets for Child Rescue. Give us a sense of what brought you to that critically important mission.
Yeah, well, I was just a busted up veteran and father when we were guys from several different agencies. We're sitting smoking cigars poolside in Houston, Texas, one night, and one of the guys from the intelligence community that I'd known for years began breaking down for me what he was learning about child trafficking in Houston, and how the traffickers enjoyed impunity there, very little enforcement, and how bold and how pervasive the crime was. And I'd grown up there, and it felt very personal to me. It felt like an invasion of the worst evil came to my hometown. I felt like if there was an American flag, that there was only one in the United States, it should probably be right in the middle of our hometown. I mean, that's how I felt about it. And I felt invaded. I felt slapped in the face, and I knew that wasn't something that I could just abide, or that wasn't something that I could coexist with. I knew that was something I had to fight. I'd grown up and gone to the highest level of counter-terrorist operations because that was the worst evil that I could perceive growing up, is international terrorism, hijacking planes and all that. And so I went off the SEAL teams and up the DevGru and did as much of that as I could. And then I found myself learning about this. I'm like, okay, this is my fight now. And so I'm like, okay, by you guys' description, I'm learning that this is a covert operation run domestically at industrial scale. That means a lot of things to me from my background.
How covert is it? Because when you were first learning of this dynamic, was it surprising to you, or were there clues around you that you were able to kind of say, oh gosh, that's something we can go after, that's something we can fix?
It was surprising to me because I hadn't seen it. I didn't perceive it. I was read in on special programs. I had a high level clearance for 30 years. I've been part of all kinds of things for different agencies. So I know what covert is, and I'm like, I don't see it. Talk me through it. And he began talking me through it, and that's when I'm like, you SOBs, you're doing this here to our children in my hometown, and that's why I think it felt so personal and upsetting to me. And so I'm like, okay, if it's a covert operation, the worst thing that I can do against it is compromise it. Compromise the enemy's covert operation, meaning expose it for all of the American people to see and all the law enforcement to turn against, and now the hunters become the hunted. That's the dynamic I wanted to create, which we call a non-permissive environment in the covert realm.
See, I feel like most people, myself included, generally feel like when there's child trafficking or human trafficking, it's small scale. It's individual people who are just out for money or working with the cartel here and there. You're talking about industrial scale. Like, explain more of that.
Well, we're finding trafficking rings that are moving children in mass numbers. Anytime that you have a tragedy, you've got war, you've got a hurricane, you've got an earthquake, you have half a dozen NGOs that nobody ever heard of. They have a lot of aircraft and a lot of buses right there. We'll take the kids. And people are like, where are they taking the kids? Shh, don't worry about it, we got them. So what goes on with all that? Where are the arrests? Where are the investigations? We don't quite know on a lot of it, but we're finding some of these trafficking rings that are moving quite a few children at a time through locations where federal and local law enforcement are both compromised or complicit. So we're having to gain the evidence, doing the investigations ourselves, and then take that smoking gun once we have it to the degree that where federal law enforcement can't deny it, can't decline it, lest they be exposed to, and go and bring that. So that's what we're gathering there. And we'll see there are shipping companies, there are trucking companies, there are harbor masters. What we're finding essentially is that weak people will take the money, or desperate people will take the money to look away, or to run a truck, or to run security. And a lot of people are benefiting from. There's a lot of money being generated. So that begs the question: well, why is there so much money? Why is it worth so much? Well, there's organ harvesting, which it's worth a lot more than I would have ever have expected. But there's also, on the darker side of it, as one of the agents in that first meeting told me, Craig, appreciate your enthusiasm, but this is ultimately, it's a spiritually motivated crime. And he goes, you may not believe me, but it's a spiritually protected crime. And he goes, with your badge and gun and conventional investigations techniques, you're going to find after years, you're only going to get so close. You're never going to quite find what you're looking for until you learn to penetrate this spiritually. And I knew from growing up under a strong pastor and man of God, I'd seen all kinds of miracles happen in our church. My dad and a lot of his elders conducting these things. So I know the supernatural realm is real. I know the war between the forces of good and evil is real, but I knew I wasn't that spiritual warrior that was going to be able to deal with this. I'm like, I've got a lot of learning to do. Like, I got to become like one of these exorcist dudes, and I'm just a regular guy. You know, like I could have like be a King David or a Joshua or something. So I'm like, Father, how am I going to get there? And so I began, and in our investigations, we keep having it proven out how spiritual it is. The Epstein files are proving it out. If you read these people's communications, what they're hinting at, you're like, these are some sick people. These are some destructive,
torture
and hateful. Yeah, where does that come from?
Violence
and
threats.
Yeah, so we've got one situation where we've got over 200 survivors of satanic ritual abuse.
Where was that?
Well, it's out of Utah. I'll narrow it down to that point. Okay.
What were they doing?
In their childhood, they were put through torture scenarios and rituals for wealth and power by the elders of a particular religious institution. Talking about the very senior elders. And people believe...
Was it a satanic religion, or was it a religion purporting to be something else, but
it
then
was a religion under the banner of Jesus, but at the top was infiltrated and run by people that are literally robe-wearing, satanic, child-slaughtering monsters.
And there were hundreds of victims of this?
Yeah.
What years were they
We have
victimized?
access to hundreds, and just from one source, we have multiple sources. So there's no shortage of people who have been harmed by that institution. That's just one institution. And when you learn...
Wait a second, because this is too important. What was this institution doing to protect the monsters? I'm so excited when we get our Merriweather Farm shipments in. You get a beautiful piece of ribeye. Look at that marbling. Now, I take it out of the package, let it get down to room temperature. All I've got on here is a little salt, a little pepper, and then a little avocado oil. And then I've had my pan preheating with a little oil.
Head to merriweatherfarms.com and enter promo code MattG for 15% off your first order.
The people in that religion, basically, and by my observation, they worship the religion more than they worship God. They are more, it's a form of idolatry. They're more willing and more determined to protect the institution because it generates so much wealth and power for them than they are to protect the children. So even though there's a lot of child abuse within it, the children are made to be quiet. There's one distant cousin of my wife's in Arizona. He went to his parents and he said, hey, the elder has been raping me. and they said, we're going to send you to him and you're going to apologize for saying such a mean thing about him. And he was horrified. He's since taken his life. He told his story a couple of years ago. He came public with it.
Are you describing the LDS church?
I might be, yeah. But I don't want to start throwing that card down until we can demonstrate we've got all of the evidence down to where we're really.
You are all over these trafficking networks, and you made a point earlier I want to double tap, which is that when there are these mass casualty events or these disasters, wars, caravans where children are not accounted for, there is this funded NGO network, and they look like they're there to save the children, but really they're there to do something very different, and that is to redistribute those children to the highest bidder, right? I mean, is that what you're describing? And if so, how many people do you think have been impacted by this?
I couldn't put a number on it, but I mean, we've seen the Catholic NGOs that were quite well exposed during the Biden administration when we just abandoned our southern border and we had caravans bringing loads of people. How many children was it that the Biden administration was called? That was 325,000
So
that they admitted to. How many
that's
more?
The scale that you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. There's millions. They've trafficked millions of children globally.
Well, talk us through how you disrupt this. What do you and your sort of band of pirates emerging out of Houston do to stop this?
One of the things that we do are run sting operations. So we'll find a DA that'll prosecute because George Soros funds the campaigns of DAs, attorneys general, and judges with the agreement that they will not prosecute sex crimes against children. How that's not a glaring conflict of interest, I don't know, but it's been discussed in open congressional session on C-SPAN and others. It's not a theory. It's something that we know is there, and yet it continues. So I think first of all, we have to break that stranglehold, that checkmate of our judicial
Well, it was
system.
what you said earlier about denying a permissive environment.
Yeah.
You said that was what you learned as a SEAL, and now that permissive environment is being created by prosecutors who don't want to enforce these very important laws.
Exactly.
But let's get to operationally, when you go into one of these stings, what that looks like beyond selecting the right jurisdiction.
Yeah, so we'll, once we have an identified DA that'll prosecute, we'll usually have federal, state, and local law enforcement that will come, up to 9 agencies involved at a time, usually less. I think 9 is too many. It gets a bit cumbersome. But we'll run the operations. We have a group of chatters who are usually all survivors of childhood sexual abuse and people who look young and sound young. And we have other tools that we can utilize as well. And they'll just put out benign profiles on different media apps. And it's like, hi, I'm Sally and I'm new to the neighborhood. I like soccer or whatever. And then within seconds, people will start sending them messages and then vulgar messages and then profane messages and then pornographic pictures of this guy's genitalia and
Is there a particular app where this happens, or a social network where this happens more frequently? We've been learning a lot about roadblocks and how this has been used by predators to get access to young people. But what would you tell parents about how these apps rank and if there are any tools that can help them protect their families?
Yeah, there's a lot of, the predators are going to go wherever they can. So it's like nailing Jell-O to a wall. Wherever you squish them and wherever you deny the predators, they're going to squirt somewhere else and use other apps. So it's very fluid in that dynamic. But we've got a list of apps on our website, v4cr.org, where you go and see which ones are most problematic. Make sure those aren't on your child's phone. And if you're going to leave them there, make sure you know who your child is dealing with, because some of these apps can surreptitiously, covertly be capturing video or stills of your child. And if your child, some of them can geolocate your child. So, the Joe Predator's watching your child blink on his map as they're coming home from the school, on the school bus and going to and get the mail or whatever, getting the paper. Your child could be getting stalked. Your child goes to the mall and the Predator can be like, oh yeah, Sally's at the mall, or little Joey's at the mall today.
These sound like apps designed for this to happen.
Some of them are. Some of them are designed to look like one thing, but they're covertly something else, and the children know that. So the children hide their sexting with each other from their parents with these covert apps. And so you really have to have a relationship with your child and have these conversations and say, I'm not really just trying to deny you all fun. I'm trying to make sure you survive as a child in a time when there's a lot of predators that are after you on your smart devices.
Going off of that, and I asked you this earlier, but I wanted to talk about this on the show. Like, I have 2 young daughters, and this is like forefront of my mind now. What are some tips, suggestions, things you can tell parents to help protect their kids, just not outside of apps, just generally?
Yeah, situational awareness, just like anything else. Have your child learn to have their head up and out and their eyes scanning any space they move into. Even online, who all's on there? Who all can see you? What do these apps do? Encourage your child to increase their situational awareness just by asking questions of their environment. Visually is a good standard to kind of teach them that. I used to take my daughter to the grocery store and I'd be like, just wait before we get out of the car and just watch these ladies come to and from. Where are they looking? She's like, they're looking at their shoes, Papa. I'm like, okay, if I was behind her in a big Barney suit stalking her, trying to scare her, she would never see me, would she? And she's like, no, Papa. I'm like, because she doesn't look around. So don't be that lady, because that's dangerous. And before you walk across the street in the bus, look at the bus driver's eyes to make sure he sees you and means to let you go. Because what if he has a heart attack, seizure, or stroke, and he's asleep at the wheel and he's going to run over you? Some of these kids, they don't look. They're like, I got the right of way. I'm going to walk across the highway.
Well, they don't even pay attention. They're on their phone. They walk across.
So that I like to say visually first. Like, if you allow your brain to drink in what's going on in the space, you walk out in the hallway, just look left and right, and your brain will pick up on something that's not right. Like, ooh, there's violence there, something wrong, something's burning. Just scan and develop that basic technique. And then if something looks wrong, you can give it further scrutiny. And if you see something dangerous, don't go that way.
Yeah.
If you hear problems on an app, man, you might want to get off of that one and onto something else. So those things are kind of universal.
Yeah.
Situational awareness.
More passive. Like, what's a proactive thing?
Yeah, proactive. If you see your children I'll say misbehaving according to their baseline standard, your kids. Like my son started to withdraw one year. I was contracting over the war zones. And I came home and I'm like, hey, Caden's quiet. What's going on? And she's like, I don't know. He's been that way lately. And so we decided, and I started asking him, he couldn't tell me anything. We started to plug in at the school because that's the only place that he was without us. And we started plugging in at the school and found there was a predatory teacher. He wasn't physically abusing our child, but he was psychologically choosing one child per year and humiliating that child. And just that teacher got off on systematically harming a child by humiliating them. And so our child he's brilliant. He's far sharper than I've ever been. And yet he was slowing down and he was withdrawing because it felt so bad that this teacher was doing this to him, somebody he trusted. And
it sounded like even within your own family, there was an intelligence gathering component. And you've talked about in these operations, the chatters you have, the stings you set up. What does that lead to in terms of, a confrontation, a scenario where you're able to stop something really bad from happening?
Well, in the case of my son, we went to the school. We demanded that teacher be fired.
More in your operational.
But on the operation, our daughter was abducted when she just turned 18 and savagely abused and deeply traumatized. So you can see that in our documentary Contraland online at contralandmovie.com. But she decided after we got her
Contraland?
Contraland, yes, sir.
Like the Contras?
Yeah, but
we could probably put that up.
The producer came up with that title because he said, well, children are the new contraband, and the United States is the new Contraland.
Wow.
So that's what we went with, and that's how that came about. But so my daughter decided that she wanted to fight back, and we were already running operations at the time when she decided that, and she said, I want to be one of your junior decoy agents on your team. And I was like, nope. You're not going around any bad guys.
Hell no.
But long story short, all my team and my wife and my daughter's counselor and my daughter and everybody else conspired against me and talked me into letting her do it. And 8 years later, now she's our fiercest predator hunter. She is unstoppable. Law enforcement love her. She is tenacious, and the predators come for her like crazy, and she loves watching them get handcuffed and put into a squad car.
Are there any times during these operations where you've been concerned for your physical safety or the physical safety of any of your team members?
There has, but level of concern, you're talking to a tier 1 level counter-terrorist operator who's
probably very little concerns you.
Quite a few hundred, over 600 skydives and world records and combat and a bunch of different theaters. And, it's so I'm a bit numb to what would terrorize the healthy-minded person or a normal person, if you want to, put that
but what about even concern for your team?
Yeah, well, I put body armor on my daughter. Any of our chatters, we used to have it to where the predator would come in the room with the junior decoy agent and with one of our other undercover agents. And then I would walk into the room. After they had done questioning them, I would walk in, and that would change the dynamic. Sometimes they thought I was there to rape him. The guys would get scared, and we would only learn afterward.
What do you say when you walk in to confront someone after you've got them?
You can watch it in Contraland. I was making stuff up. I was trying everything. One time I was like, hey, I'm your tour guide. Like, whatever you want, I'll provide it for you. Here for some freaky stuff, man, I'll make it happen. I'm that guy, just to see what he was going to do, One time I pretended to be a repair guy at a clipboard. I'm like, man, your ceiling fan's all done. You want to sign here? And I'm like, oh, hey, what are you doing here? Aren't you the one guy that blah, 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 blah?
Oh, my gosh.
And just have a conversation with him and then start unpacking and watch him fall apart. So it's just, I like to mix it up and try different things and see what works. But I always ask them, what got you onto children? And they'll say, well, it was porn. Usually a friend sent me some porn. There was some Japanese lady with a kid's costume on. And next thing you know, years later, here I am.
Wow. That is the transition for a lot of these folks.
In a lot of cases, I don't think the average American guy sees porn as the danger that it apparently is, that it obviously is. Having investigated and interviewed enough of these guys, I could tell you right now, I never perceived it to be that type of danger, but it is. Because the same reason that a guy that drinks too much eventually can become an alcoholic and ruin his whole life.
Push it further and further.
Drug addicted. It's an addiction where something that looks normal and healthy at first is enough, but after a while you get numb to it, and then a little doesn't do it, so little becomes more and more and more, and next thing you know, these guys are off on animals and children and snuff flicks, and it's just dark and dysfunctional. It's pure evil. So it's a downward spiral.
What do you think is the most evil person you ever caught, met, encountered in this incredible work?
Oh, man.
I know it's probably a lot of superlatives.
It's hard to know without interviewing them extensively and really seeing what darkness lurks in them. We had one guy who was an LDS church elder. We arrested him in Utah, and he'd come after church with his suit on, and we'd gotten. He said he had been in the intelligence community in the Army. I think he said it was Army Intel before. But he came to pay for 2 girls, and he wanted to have them one at a time, and then he wanted to have them both together. And I understand the judge let him out inside of like 2 years.
What?
And I was asking law enforcement there at the time that day, I'm like, okay, this dude's a monster. How long? Please tell me. He's 73. Please tell me he's never getting out. They're like, no, that should be a life sentence for him. And I heard he'd gotten out. I was livid. I'm like, well, and apparently the judge had said, well, he's too old to be a threat. I'm like, well, did you not see the evidence of the crime? You probably had 30 law enforcement there. So you've got, arrest team, sheriff's department, and guys from different agencies, and he's coming with Viagra and sex lube and condoms, and he paid $100 that he articulated exactly what he was there to do. And then members of his family called us afterward in the following months and thanked me for putting a stop to his raping binge, because he was raping the daughters and the granddaughters.
Jeez. Amazing.
So that's not a good man,
No.
but there in that location, he's royalty. He's an elite pedophile, so he gets special treatment.
Has there been a situation, you said not much phases you in these things, but has there been a situation where things got out of control and it got dangerous?
There was one guy that decided to bolt. He had left his wife and children at a ski resort, and he had come down, taken the van with 2 car seats in the back, come down to have sex with a girl. And thought he was just going to do that and go back up, and he got caught. He decided to run. They sent the K-9 unit on him. You can see that one in Contraland too. It was interesting because that K-9 was so well disciplined. He gave the command, and that thing was on that guy. Jumped off the front porch, was running to his van, but then some of the SWAT team rounded the corner. They were waiting outside the corner of the house. They stepped in front of him and cut him off. And so the K-9 handler called his K-9 right back off of him with another command. That dog stopped right before he jumped. And we're like, man, that's instant discipline. That was an impressive dog, But that guy, you could just see him, the grass all in his face after being handcuffed, and he realized he just ruined his life and probably the lives of his wives and kids. And, there's so many people involved. But I've had wives tell me too, thanks for catching my husband, because we got 4 kids and I don't want him harming them. I don't know that he has, but that has
to be such a challenging thing for someone to say to muster that thanks, but also the relief it brings when you've neutralized a threat is probably overwhelming. That people feel as though that burden is off of them. You talked about the industrial scale of this, and I think you're right. I think that may be the part that surprises the most people about this discussion. Can you talk to us about any cases you're aware of or have been involved in where it's not just 1 or 2 victims, but a big batch, of victims, other than that case you mentioned in Utah?
Yeah, there's a location that we're investigating right now where best evidence and intel that we have on it is about 200 children per month being moved through there. 200
a month?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just think about how many that is a day. And they're moved through. Like, walk us through I hate to say it in such a crass way, but
protect this investigation because it's a big one. This is an important one.
Supply chain on this is where presumably there is a vulnerability for you to go and exploit to rescue people.
Yeah.
And so maybe not this case, but in the broader context of your work, or maybe a case that's concluded, when you look at the industrial supply chain, where do you choose to attack and exploit that? And where do you think you can make the most progress?
Yeah, we're figuring a lot of that out. So right now, so you say the rescues, there will be quite a bit of rescues to do on this one, but that's probably going to have to be federal law enforcement to move on that at that scale. So we're a small team. We're a small nonprofit org. And I've got a lot of tier 1 operators from both units that I can reach to that I've operated with over the years, but we normally don't need them. It's mostly investigative work and chatting with them, and law enforcement handles the arrest, and we'll run the surveillance and sometimes the external security, especially if there's night vision and thermal and sniper overwatch and that kind of stuff we can handle. But
it sounds like a lot of this, you do have to kind of develop the facts, and you're a force multiplier for law enforcement in a lot of ways. Has there ever been a time when you've really been angry at the lack of cooperation, where you've gone and said, gosh, I've really got something here that requires attention, and you feel like you were summarily brushed aside? Yeah,
we ran a Super Bowl op 2 years or 3 years ago, and we got 5 cases where these guys should do hard time, and there was a rep from the Bureau there. He handed all that evidence off to the Bureau, and we've never heard anything from him.
What year was that?
That would have been 2004.
Oh, wow. It was a while back.
Yeah. So that's frustrating, but I didn't have that conversation with them to know why they weren't moving on those. So maybe
but by and
they
large,
didn't get what they wanted.
By and large, you probably get more support than not, right?
Well, we got 100% conviction rate on our cases. So, when we're dealing directly with the host agency, and we've got Bureau guys there, and we've got HSI there, and we've got U.S. Marshal Service there, it's always gone great. So in that one case, it was handed off, and that was frustrating. But again, I didn't get an answer on why they didn't move on that. But I'm like, come on, man, these guys committed the crimes, and they've, exceeded the elements of the crime. So you don't always know what's required or who the personalities are in some cases.
Yeah, but I think with what you do in basically getting a funnel system for potential investigations, convictions, disruptions of networks, it's really interesting to us to see where that funnel goes and how to make sure that it's given faithfulness. You mentioned that you are an Arizonan and you live in the district of someone I admire greatly, Eli Crane, Congressman Eli Crane. And there would be times on the floor of Congress when Eli would say to me, when I'd be all upset about an amendment vote or a bill that did or didn't get brought to the floor, he'd say, Matt, this is a cosmic battle between good and evil. And we are playing our part in it, but the good guys do win in the end. I know that. But he did so much in my own growth and development to see beyond the facts that we're observing to really what the overlay is. And I'm wondering how you see that in your work.
Well, my observations of Eli are just as stellar as yours. I mean, I think very highly of him as a friend, a brother, and patriot. But when we were sitting down smoking cigars, one of the agents says, you're going to have to learn that this is a spiritual conflict and that it's a spiritually motivated crime. Well, we've found that. We found in our investigations that there are people that do this for wealth and power. And if you look at it through a spiritual lens, and that's the only lens that this makes any sense, why would people bring diapers and stun guns and all this stuff to abduct children that we catch them with? These are very sick individuals, but where does all this come from? Why is there benefit to this being run at such industrial scale? Why is there this giant meat grinder for children, if you will? And it's the spiritual motive. So go all the way back to Genesis 6, the fallen angels making war against the Creator, and we are made in the image of the Creator, in the image of God. And more so, the little ones are the purest and most spiritually pure and innocent of us all. And so those are the high-value target of the wicked. So if you got Joe Scumbag, he's willing to do anything for wealth and power. Well, you want to be in the club? Because the club, I can get you into a Congress seat, or I can get you in as mayor, or I can make that murder that you did, that we know you did, we can make that go away. We can get you a high-paying job. You want to be in the club? This is the club, but you got to let us do stuff to you on video, as in the Diddy case, or you got to do stuff to little boys or little girls underage on video, as in Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, those type of blackmail and intel collection operations, which is exactly what that was. And so we've got to see arrests of those people. We've got to see the people that are in the club. George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. That's what he's talking about.
So
we've got to see arrests. That's why people are saying, okay, we've got a war, appreciate that, but we still have we have a set of files of some very egregious and very evil behavior that we want to see arrests on. We've got a laptop that's been protected, and we know that there are names of wicked people.
You're talking about the Anthony Weiner laptop,
Yes, sir.
aren't you?
Yeah.
The Anthony Weiner laptop. It's so interesting you mentioned that. I was speaking with members of Congress today who were seeking my advice about how to fashion up subpoenas for that laptop for precisely the reason that you identified. People believe there is evidence in that Anthony Weiner laptop, and I don't know, but I certainly think that it should be reviewed to see.
How are you going to know if you don't have an honest look at it? And so why all the hocus pocus surrounding that laptop and a bunch of other things? Look at
the
all the
whole
Hillary
Epstein
Clinton's
files. I mean, here you
destroyed
are.
Devices.
You've been doing this work since. You've been doing this work for decades.
8 years, yeah.
Oh, 8 years. I'm sorry. You've been doing this work for 8 years, and yet, right before us, we get the greatest disclosure of this information probably that we've ever seen. And you see consequences internationally. You see consequences for people in business, academia here, and I think you're right to call for a ratcheting up of those consequences.
Yeah, I mean, what could it hurt to just air it out and let's get to the bottom of it?
What do you think the real story is there? You gave it some treatment when you said it was an intel collection operation, but just take a moment and tell our viewers what you think was really going on the Epstein stuff.
I think people of influence, public figures, elected representatives are targeted, and they're invited to these mansions and parties and yachts where there's every manner of hookers and blow, follow your nose, do what you like, and knowing that they're going to capture activity with young children and thereby then blackmail that person for the rest of it. It used to be, you catch a congressman having an affair, back in the 30s or 40s, that's a bad man. Then it had to be a homosexual affair for anybody to care. Now it's children. And so they use that. And Jeffrey Epstein mastered that.
What do you think he was doing that for?
He was working for Ghislaine. She was running that show. Her daddy was a Mossad agent, and she was running that op. And so Jeffrey was like...
so do you think Mossad was involved?
I do, based on everything I've seen.
Do you think other intel agencies were involved?
Yes. Yeah, I believe our CIA was heavily involved, probably the Bureau too. Look at who founded the Bureau. I mean, that was his... And if you think, he loved having dirt on people.
And if you think Mossad and the CIA, Bureau potentially, were involved in this, do you believe it was a one-off, or do you believe that those organizations could be involved in similar operations around the world?
I think it's common. I think it's global. I think you can look at this, and that's why we don't get a lot better service out of a lot of our representatives. I think a lot of them are compromised, and they can't fight the way they want to because somebody's like, we got your video. Remember who you really work for.
So you talk about the spiritual component, but then that also sounds like that's just, people being disgusting and getting caught on camera. Like, how much of that is... Because I'm struggling with the spiritual aspect, because it seems to me like that's a very intellectual, philosophical motivation. I completely buy that that's happening. But it seems like the vast majority of these are just scumbags, who are out there just doing it for their own reasons, and they have no higher purpose or values. What are you seeing?
You're right, and there's every layer of it. So all the way down to the bottom, you've got kids selling each other and themselves, and parents selling their children, crack addict parents, and you've got MS-13 and gangbangers, the Crips and Bloods, selling children where they used to sell, crack or whatever, cocaine. Then you've got Mexican drug cartels overseeing a lot of big international drug sales. And you've got China involved because there's a lot of money and power and influence for them. So you've got a lot of that, and that's just a typical crime spree. It's about the greed, right? And the control in the sense of the blackmail. But then spiritually, you get into the satanic cult groups, the people who are the high level, I call them high level, but they are very dedicated Luciferians. You hear people talk about the 13 families that run all the international global banking and the 300 families that really suck up to them, and they run most of major institutions. What are those people into? What are all the family members, the whistleblowers and the survivors and the witnesses come out saying about them? And when you start to research it, you start realizing they're about having ritual ceremonies, and they do get benefits. They get spiritual benefits from it, but it doesn't take, in my opinion, a rocket scientist go, okay, well, one side of this spiritual war is the creator, and the other one are all created beings. Guess who loses?
Yeah.
But these people that are in this, they're enjoying so much earthly wealth and power, they don't want to think about what's later, or they've been deceived and they believe that in hell, it's just going to be some magical
big
party, and it's going to be somehow cool, like a rock party,
So if this is like 320,000 kids, just for one example, under Biden, that level requires so much coordination that implies that it is being organized at very high levels of what can only be the government. So who is involved in this? Like, how far does this go?
Well, you have... It's not all centralized. You've got a lot of people helping themselves in their own satanic cults and witches' covens and Luciferian groups and things like that globally. So some of them are connected, some of them are not so connected. And so, you can't run anything at industrial scale in the continental United States without the Bureau and the agencies knowing about it. I mean, if we ran a legit lemonade stand out here on the
You get
weekend,
shut
how
down.
long would it be before someone's going to want their tax
That
money?
happened
Totally.
just a couple
But
weeks
now
ago.
scale it up to a few $100 billion. And then it goes away. Why? Because palms are greased and deals are made. So, there's a friend of mine that was an assistant police chief, and he studied high-level organized crime in central United States, all the way down to the Gulf Coast for 14 years with multiple task forces. And he's figured out how the BRICS nations are using their money, hundreds of millions of dollars for the payouts, the side deals for the politicians that they install and other officials. And
which, by the way, that's probably why BRICS fails. BRICS probably fails ultimately under its own corruption because of what you just described. You can't maintain a system like that where there's no predictable decision making beyond who's getting paid off. But I completely believe what your friend
they're
said.
using municipal bonds because people don't think about it.
Yeah.
And it's complicated and it sounds boring. And they're laundering hundreds of billions through real estate loan fraud. So they'll take a house that's worth $200,000-$300,000, and they'll take multiple loans on it for tens of millions of dollars. And he could demonstrate this. All these task forces have been investigating this for 14 years, and you can see who's who and what all they're doing, but yet it's not being broken. So my thing is, when President Trump got in, I'm like, okay, I'm a national security whistleblower. I blew the whistle on high-ranking SES level executive from the top of the FBI when I was a federal air marshal manager. I need a meeting with Trump or Kash Patel or Dan Bongino at the top of the bureau and say, hey, here's my plan on how to purge any key agency of its corruption. I know how the deep state protects its corruption, and therefore I know how to break it. I need a meeting. I will share my plan. Let's put together a task force and righteously purge any agency of its corruption, reset it back.
What's the first step of that plan?
Yeah. How does that work? Can you share without?
First of all, you have to interview most of the people and interview and ask them who's who. And they'll tell you, who are the problem children? Who are the corrupt people here? Who are the good guys? And some will lie to you. But in separating them and interviewing enough of them, you're going to develop patterns and you're going to know. And you fire all the ones that are corrupt. You prosecute the ones that are criminally corrupt. And then you promote the shining stars that are the genuine right fighters. And you bring in more management.
The problem is it's been going the other way. So, I mean, this was a project I was hoping to endeavor upon because under Obama and Eric Holder, they flipped that on its head. They worked so hard to get people with extensive subject matter experience out, and the people that they brought in were the DEI hires and the Woketopians. And some of those people that came in as line prosecutors, line agents under Obama and Holder, now they're division chiefs. Now they're moving up, and what you described is absolutely essential to preserve the republic, because there comes a point at which they move so high in the organizational structure that the organization becomes entirely captive. I did want to take a moment tonight to talk a little bit about the inspiring stories of victims. You must have encountered victims of some of these events that have gone through a lot, and obviously in your own family you shared an example. But are there other stories of people who have prevailed through this, come out on the other side that you want to highlight?
Yeah, and I'll tell you that with all the horror that we see from the bad side, the good side is so much more powerful and so much more beautiful. And that's what really makes it all worthwhile. You see people that have been rescued, been delivered and healed, miraculously so, from horrible trauma, really deep trauma. And that's what really inspires us. So there have been people who have, one case was a lady who's, there's a few of them that taught us how a certain ritual goes as a standardized ritual, that little girls were abused by a group of men in a church, and then they would make the girl cry out for Jesus. And one of them, dressed like Jesus with wardrobe and makeup, and they meant for it to be very real, would come and betray the girl, torture her, sexually assault her, and then abandon her. And so they meant for that person to never again accept any help from Jesus, because, I remember that guy. He was the worst. And then they would take the girl through a veil into the next room, just outside of the sanctuary, the next room, and there would be a guy dressed up like Satan, and he would have what essentially sounded to me like a picnic and have all the girls' favorite foods there. Oh, you can have anything you want with me. Basically, I'm your sugar daddy now. We're sorry about that wimpy Jesus guy, what he did. He has no power. We threw him out. But I'll never do that to you, and you can have anything you want
How
with
old
me.
was this?
About 12 is my understanding, is when they do this to these girls. So when you hear them, and one of them said to us, and I struggle to tell it to this day without choking up, and she said, while this fake Jesus was raping me, the real Jesus came to me. Because in these highly demonized ritual ceremonies, what you'll learn to happen is these children, when there's a supernaturally charged atmosphere and satanic stuff is being done beyond human description, beyond words, they can see a lot of times into the spirit realm. The veil is torn, they say. So children can see the demonic and they can see the divine. Sometimes they'll see angels, sometimes they'll see the demons, they'll see other entities, fallen gods with the big horns and stuff sitting on a throne over in the corner.
This is what they describe to you?
This is what they'll describe. And the one said, she said, so this fake Jesus, she knew he was a fake Jesus, was raping me. She said, the real Jesus came and comforted me. And I said, forgive me for asking, but how do you know that was the real Jesus? And she teared up and she said, because he was glorious and he's the one with the holes in his hands. And I know him now. I'm like, oh. And she said, basically, he let me know this is going to end and I got you and I'm going to deliver you from this. And so these children know, even in the darkest of times, some of them are ministered to in that way. And
but don't we see so many stories in the Bible of in these moments of grave peril and horror and awfulness, God appears. Yeah. And it really does show, the power of Jesus to permeate even the worst circumstance you could possibly even imagine.
My daughter was angry after her abduction, which I understand.
Yeah.
Because she asked, well, why didn't Jesus stop it? And she's at a different place already now with that. But my wife was serially abused by a neighbor family when she was growing up. And Jesus would come to her, but she wasn't tortured. She was just systematically sexually abused. But she said in that sense, Jesus would come to her and reach out his hand and before it would begin and say, you don't need to be here for this, come with me. And she said when she took his hand, she was with him in another place, and she said it was beautiful. And I'm like, okay, so like cognitive, like you're checking out mentally. She goes, no, I don't know how I can tell you, but it was physical. When I took his hand, I went to another place physically with him. She said it was a forest. We walked by the stream. It's just the same place every time. Sometimes other kids would be playing, sometimes not. But there was a big flat rock. We would sit down, and she said, if I had something to show it, to compare it to, I know what his robe smells like. I know what his robe smells like. He's real. And she says, it was physical, and he would hold me. And then after a while, we would walk back, and he's like, okay. And whatever nightmare was happening was done, and she would be back in her body, and then she would be done and go home. So
it really speaks to the personal relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
That evangelical, the evangelical church embraces.
Yeah, it's not about religion for these people. It's a genuine personal relationship with their Creator.
Yeah.
It's about that. And I wish a lot of people could get past a lot of the religion that blocks people. I run into people every day like, no thanks, I don't like religion because bad people did stuff. And I'm like, I appreciate that. I wish you could know what I know.
Yeah.
Know him the way I know. You wouldn't care about people or religion. You would just love him back, man, because he's good.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm gaining from the survivors who heal. And some of them are ministers now. Some of them are very highly educated. Some of them very successful and with their families and everything to different degrees. Some of we've interviewed are still very freshly traumatized and not there yet. But it's all valuable information because they can describe to you matter-of-factly like they would in a court of law what they experience. And you see some of these rituals are standardized. They do this to a lot of kids, man. And a lot of them, they don't survive.
Who's the head of all of this? Is it decentralized, or is there like a central node?
I don't know of an absolute pinnacle. It seems a bit decentralized. From after 8 years, our investigations, from what I understand, it seems like there are multiple networks and multiple streams of this. I think it's just weak men worshiping the fallen for wealth and money and willing to do anything to get it. And
Pearson, any
it's just the lowest form of dysfunction.
What is this is hard to articulate. It's so abstract. The spiritual motivation for these monsters to do something like this. Why does it have a spiritual aspect, I guess? Why do they need that as opposed to just being a disgusting human being on their own? Where does the spiritual aspect come into this? What do they get out of it?
Well, there are supernatural gifts. The fallen do have power. The Bible says Satan is the god of this world. Small g, and only for a season, but that's what it says. So I think that's allowed for us to be tested so we can choose between the Father's way and the way of ourselves, which is the way of the fallen, and to learn through that process. So they do get benefits. They get wealth, they get power. You look at all the most wealthy people in the world. What are the Epstein files? A lot of these other whistleblowers and witnesses and family members that are coming out. What are they all saying? They're Luciferians, or they call them satanic pedophiles. But I mean, Luciferian is their more highbrow way that they believe, and they sell it to themselves. Like,
but I think Pearson is asking, like, I guess why the spiritual overlay? Why not, and I guess it's that they're trying to access some sort of justification for their like awful worldly acts.
Or they think they're literally getting benefits from doing this.
Well, if you listen to
Craig's saying they are, that there are those powers of Satan that we see manifest on earth all the time, and it does come from a power center somewhere.
Bestowing gifts.
We primarily in the public only hear about remote viewing through government programs. Oh, and it's experimental through an MK Ultra or something, and they tried a little bit, but it kind of didn't work. No, a remote viewing is an absolute power that the fallen can give to their scumbags, and so our government deals with it, but what the government doesn't admit is that it's demonic. The power that powers that skill set up is utterly demonic. So these people get off on having these perks and powers. They to see, like, bring a camera into a room and they can see what the heck's going on there. They use it for extortion. They use, they take people and they traumatize them. It's all trauma-based programming. MK Ultra and Monarch.
The trauma does seem to be like very much an essential element.
Yeah, because that's what causes the mind to split into the different parts. And then they'll expertly, it's very sophisticated, they'll take each personality part within the same physical body and they will train the person, that personality part, to do a certain skill set.
Like an assassin?
An assassin or a honeypot, like a sex kitten. They call them betas. To go target, if you ran for Congress, send one into your hotel, and she's the best thing you've ever seen, man, and she just loves you to death. Next thing you know, you wake up and there's video of you, next to a bloody child in chains or some horrible thing that you're like, oh, and they're like, okay, now we got you, or it's more subtle than that, and it takes more time than that, but a lot of that happens too. So. If you listen to Pastor Dave Bryan and guys like that, he got into a big tiff with the founder of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey. And Anton LaVey's daughter had come to Pastor Dave for rescue, and she was living with him, and they had this poltergeist type of satanic manifestation in their home every night. It's like, what the heck's going on with you? And finally she admitted, she goes, well, my daddy's Anton LaVey, and I'm trying to get away from him. He wants to ritually murder me on Halloween as this bride of Satan kind of thing. Well, anyway, what Pastor Dave describes is that Anton was able to, what they call body jump in a satanic ritual. His soul soul and mind are synonymous. His soul could leave his physical body and enter his daughter's body, and he was essentially animating his daughter's body and talking to Pastor Dave, and Pastor Dave's like, Anton? Is that you and your daughter? What the heck? And he's like, hey, preacher boy, this is what's going to happen, and she's mine, and, hands off. And so when you start hearing of things like that, it's very hard to believe, and I'm not saying everybody has to believe it, but that's what we're learning about. And so you're asking why? Well, there are powers that the fallen can apparently grant, and so that's part of it. But the wealth is enough for a lot of humans.
Power.
And the power. You can,
And
somebody
trauma.
picked on you in college or high school, and you want to off him. If you're part of the club, you can have that, and it'll be
power
brushed
fantasy.
under the rug, or whatever people get off on, whatever they want that's not good, they can get in that. And so that's what we're, so far,
And this
that's
isn't
what we're finding.
theoretical. You're going there and you're seeing evidence of these things.
Oh, yeah. And you can look at all the case studies. I mean, Russ Dizdar would go into a lot of these cases for law enforcement and help them break the case. Like the Jeffrey Dahmer case was one that he worked. And they would say, well, we got these guys, psycho, and he's got a shrine of bones in his living room. What does that mean? And Russ is like, let me have a look. He's like, well, he's a Satanist, and here's what kind of Satanist. And here's what you can expect through his friends network. And here's what you could probably start looking for bodies. And he's probably almost certainly a split multiple, meaning he's probably tortured in his childhood to get to this level of depravity. And so you're going to have to figure out how to find the personality part that did this, or he's genuinely not going to know what he did. He can't help you because
Craig, is this getting better or worse?
it's getting worse. It's like, I believe, Matt, that we're getting toward the end of the book. If you look at it biblically, and it seems like to me, all of this stuff with the wars and the rumors of wars and men will be lovers of themselves and all this biblical prophecy, it's like the veil is being lifted of what's always been. Weak men doing unspeakable evil for wealth and power. There's been that exchange of technology with the fallen and humans since the book of Genesis. It's always happened. At first, it was swords and armor, and then warfare, and then makeup and astrology and all that kind of stuff. And now I think they've taught man how to split and program and use other humans as slaves for the rest of their lives, with them being largely unwitting to it. So there's just a lot of, it's all, we're not to be fascinated by this. We're not to be impressed by it. It's dysfunctional. It's doomed. It's evil. These people are all going to burn in hell unless they repent and ask for forgiveness and turn from their wicked ways. But
Until then, you're going to hunt them. Until then, you're going to hunt them.
And I was going to say, I know we got to go. So what can people do to support your organization?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, they can go to our website, v4cr.org, and they can empower themselves, learning from the tools. They can donate because we're a nonprofit org. That's how we run our ops, is people help fund us. Buy our merch. Our coffee's epic. Pray for our nation. Pray for our leaders. Pray for our reps. Pray for the children.
Yeah, especially.
Pray without ceasing. This is a spiritual war, whether each of us comprehends that or not. What's going on globally, we need a lot of good people praying good things, and look after the children any way that you can. Help get involved through legislation, stronger laws against the predators, stronger protections for the children. That's what we have to demand from our elected officials. Hold their feet to the fire and say, that's what we want. We love the children, and we demand that you help us.
Thank you for what you do. Someone with your skills could exploit those skills for great personal gain, wealth, power, and here you are fighting for the most vulnerable among us, and it's deeply inspiring, and it I think will cause other people to want to really have your back in these moments, because the type of evil you're describing does lose in the end, but we have agency too. And we have to use that agency, and you're a great example. Pearson, thank you so much for bringing the Sawman in.
Yeah. Well, I got to thank Adam Handelsman for hooking us up.
Oh, yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Adam, thank you, brother.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. We appreciate you joining us. That's Vets for Child Rescue. Give us that website again.
Yep, v4cr.org.
Check them out, and we'll be back next week for another episode of Anchormen. If hearing all of these crazy stories about spycraft is making you think that there might be turbulence ahead, buy gold. I'm betting my family's financial future on asset classes that have stood the test of time. Lear Capital has all the information ready for you to make the right choice for your goals. So if you want that information, you go to learmat.com. They've got everything ready for you, learmat.com, and you will be partnered with the leader in precious metals investing. They will get you educated, and they are the only folks that have a 24-hour satisfaction guarantee. You can get your money back if necessary. Nobody else has this, but the customer service is so great. You're going to get the investor guides, the report. You're going to see the durable value of gold and silver, and you'll see what people are saying about the potential ahead. Learmat.com. Protect your family's financial future now. Call 800-511-3700. That's 800-511-3700.
Want to see more great videos like this? Click on the link below to subscribe to OAN Live and watch Dan Ball's Real America and The Matt Gaetz Show on Dish Channel 212. Tune in, subscribe.